Oh boy. Whoa. Alright guys, what's going on? So today's video is one I know a lot of you guys have been waiting for a long time, and I'm going to be giving you not just an update on all my cars, but most importantly, I'm going to finally give you guys an update on the engine for my F100. I'm going to hopefully be bringing that thing back here shortly. But yeah, so a lot of stuff's happened. Try not to keep you guys in the dark. I really hate doing that, but it's one of those things where when a lot of my important cars to the channel are broken, I don't really have too many options, and a lot of times I'm outsourcing things to help get it fixed faster, and it ends up taking longer, and it's out of my control. And the main one is my engine was at the machine shop for like 4 or 5 months. It was a pretty long amount of work and outsourcing parts that are always out of stock and whatnot, but we did manage to get everything, get it to the machine shop and get it all working, so now we can finally assemble it. So in today's video, we're finally going to go over the engine parts themselves, the plan for the F100, and all the other projects around that we got going on right now. So let's get right into it. And before we get too far into today's video, I wanted to ask you guys, please, it would really mean a lot to you if you went on to enjoy today's video, leave a like. It would help me immensely. Can't say that enough. Leaving a like on the video definitely pushes my videos higher up in the algorithm. The algorithm is literally just a computer operated system that YouTube puts out there based on the number of likes in the first 24 hours. So if you drop in and immediately leave a like on the video, it helps me out more than I can ever express. So thank you guys that do it all the time. It really does mean a lot. But following that, oh, there she is. Been sitting there for a minute. Sucks. So I'm gonna hold off on the F100 just for a minute because there's a lot going on with that truck. Specifically with this car, I know a lot of you guys have probably just seen it in the background wondering what's going on with it. We're still outsourcing parts for this thing. So for those of you guys who don't know, we are actually doing a Coyote Swap with this car, as well as a bunch of other goodies that I'm not gonna get too far into in this video, but let's just say a modern driveline, manual transmission, not sure about boost or aspiration yet, supercharged, turbo, nitrous, whatever. One of those is gonna be on this car. This is gonna be like a SEMA Young Guns Battle of the Builders like level car, which I'm just being patient. I don't wanna unravel anything too fast. So for right now, the car has had some basic sheet metal work done. We did quarters on it. Autometal Direct supplied the quarter panels for this car, as well as the upper deck panel, which you can see right here. So all that stuff's all welded in. It's not really like fit and finish. As you can see, all the welds are still exposed. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done. It needs to be primered. The back part needs to be finished. But for the most part, the sheet metal is on the car and it looks like a car. That's really the most important part, as well as if I walk around the other side of it, you can see, for those of you guys who have actually watched me do all this, you'll know I did a roof section on it as well. This I got out of another Galaxy roof. I went and cut and sectioned it in and made it all fit. And now there's no rust on this side. So this car actually is 110% rust free. Floors are all original to this car, which is really cool. So you can see how perfect they are. It'll be kind of a shame when we cut them out to fit the massive motor that's going in this car, as well as the back half. The trunk is flawless and everything in between. So this is actually a perfect example of a rust-free Galaxy. I mean, if you're going to build a car from scratch, this is exactly what you want to start with. So it doesn't look like much right now, but basically the biggest reason that we're not working on this one right now is because of this one right here. So we're looking to outsource the front and rear chassis sections for this car, being we're going to be going with a higher horsepower modular engine in this car. There's no reason to go with the stock K-member and the stock leaf spring rear suspension. So talking to a bunch of different people and trying to figure out what we want to do for the front clip, it might come down to something where we literally just cut the front and rear sections of the frame off and build it all basically from scratch, or buy a front clip and then weld it on in its place. So that's going to be a very, very modernized, very cool car. It'll look like a Galaxy, but everything underneath is not going to be anything Galaxy related. It's also going to have a full cage front to back, a bunch of race car parts. I have a full rendering, which I won't show yet, but let's just say it's going to be a really cool car. So for right now, it's waiting. But then for the car in front of it, it's probably caused more problems than any other car I've ever owned in terms of scheduling this Galaxy. So you can see we're actually in the middle of wiring it, which I've never done, so it's a little bit challenging for me. I'm kind of taking my time with it, teaching myself everything about the harness and how it all works. That's a painless kit. They make it very, very easy. I'll have a video coming on that when I finish it. For right now, just kind of giving you guys a little update. It's already pretty much ready to go. To paint, you can see our trim fits for the most part. It's just set in there. It's not actually like bolted down or anything. But this is kind of our finished product with our gas door area. And then basically this thing will get fully torn apart once it's all wired up. Basically get it running and driving. You can see I got my glass fitted, door glass fitted, and then I gotta run the wiring harness. And once I get it to actually have power and run and make this car run, I basically pull it all apart and send it out to get painted. So we did spend a bunch of time, which it's covered up right now, but you guys saw Heat Shield Products came out and we did a full install for the fuel system. So everything in the fuel system is good to go. Electrical system is being wired, and once it's wired, we have fuel, we'll have spark, and this thing will run. So it ran perfectly fine when we brought it over here, so there's no reason it shouldn't continue to do so. So basically we'll finish the wiring harness and then we'll get it running, make sure it'll drive around the block. We have brakes, I make sure those work, so those are all bled up or work really well. And make sure everything functions, so then when I get it back from paint, all I have to do is just assemble the car and then it's done. So realistically, we're on our final stretch. You can just see the amount that's going on in here. I mean, it's a lot, I'll admit, but painless, like I said, doesn't make it very easy, so I'm just kind of taking my time, which is probably the most important detail that I don't want you guys to forget, is I am the only person that works on these cars. I don't have an employee that is here every single day helping me. It's just me. I'm the only person that works on every single car here. It's how it's always been. So for longer, lengthier projects like wiring harnesses, it takes me a while to be able to do that. Plus I just started school, so it's a lot of stuff like that where time management is incredibly important, and I want you guys to be patient with me with some of these projects because it's just me teaching myself how to do a project like wiring a whole car. So I'm working my ass off, going as fast as I can to get these cars done, but I don't want to cut any corners. That's not the way I am. I want to make sure these cars are done right the first time. So, but yeah, that's the update on the Galaxies. And coming out to our Fox body, this has actually been my daily driver. So like I said, I just started school. It's an hour from here, and I'm actually driving it every single day. And you can see this is about a week's worth of driving every single day. It's been like incredibly windy here, so it's all dusty and dirty. I definitely need to clean this thing and actually do a couple of other adjustments to the car. It's running really good, but it seems to want to eat its own oil, which is great. So just what I need, another car that probably needs an engine. It's either burning oil through the rings or the valve guides on the head, so I don't really know. I don't want to dive into it because it's the only car I know that runs perfectly, minus the burning oil. Runs really great and it drives, so I'm not taking it apart until I finish something else. So we're gonna leave it for right now. But this car's been serving me well. I mean, it's decently clean on the inside. I need to go in full detail it. We'll go ahead and I'll take it to a car wash tonight. But for a daily, I consider this thing a fun daily. It's been reliable for the most part after I fixed a bunch of stuff. We have that new Proform radiator in it, which has been absolutely phenomenal. I have not even reached a temperature over 205 yet, but it's about 85 degrees out and I had stop and go traffic getting in and out of school today. So if you want another follow up on that radiator, it's a very good piece. I have not had an issue with it, and if anyone beats the crap out of their cars, it's me. So take it from me, it's a good piece. Then we've got our town car, probably the cheapest but most durable vehicle in my entire fleet. This car always works no matter what the circumstance. I've never had this car let me down before. I went ahead and washed it after King of the Hammers. Wish I could have better content for you guys out there, but I didn't necessarily have, like I was hoping I would have Franklin out there with me so he could help me film a bunch of stuff with the car. He was not able to bring his truck out, so unfortunately we did what we could. But everything on this car has been working pretty well. We went ahead and I did the hubs and brakes and prepped it for KOH, and everything worked really well there. But the one thing I noticed with this car when we were actually off-roading it is way too soft. So now that we have probably 200 pounds over the back end now with the bumper and the spare setup, it's bottoming out like crazy. So I noticed when I was rewatching the video from KOH, it was just every bump I hit, the thing was just smashing, bottoming out, hitting the bump stops, and up to the point where I saw on the front end I was actually starting to tear the bump stop off the side of the frame. It was hitting bumps so much. So we need to up the spring rate, put better shocks on it, and get it prepped, because in March we're actually taking this out to the Mint 400 race to run the Hoop DX event with all the like Gambler 500 people in cars. We took Michael's car out. Now we're gonna take both his car and this one, have a little race team, and we're gonna do a full custom livery on this thing. I've been talking about it. We're actually gonna spray the colors and do it. I was gonna paint it, somebody rear-ended me and peeled the whole quarter panel off. So now, hopefully if nobody crashes into this car in the next month, we'll get it painted. So expect that in the next couple of videos. We're gonna do a budget-friendly, sub $500 custom livery on this entire thing, like an 80s NASCAR. It's gonna be really, really special. All right guys, so now's the good part. I finally get to share with you guys most of the stuff that's gonna be in this new engine, probably the most important stuff. And with that, I'm really, really stoked to say I'm working with a bunch of really great companies with this project, and I cannot wait to share with you guys what we have in store for this thing. This F100 is going to be an animal like no other F100 I've ever seen on the internet. That's literally the goal. You will not see another F100 like this with this engine setup, and it's gonna sound insane. So let's get into this setup and I'll kind of walk you guys through from A to B. All right, so when I started this project, I looked at the motor that I had before, which was basically a higher compression 306. It was stock 3-inch stroke, 302 geometry, and I knew I wanted RPM with more horsepower. So I thought about building a stroker, but every single 10.5:1 331 stroker kit that I found was all out of stock at the time. I was ordering this about Black Friday. A lot of places online were sold out of pretty much anything, and that's in the beginning of this whole not being able to get anything out of stock crisis across the entire country. That's nothing you guys haven't seen before. So I opted to piece together my own rotating assembly out of parts that I could find that was in stock, and what I came together was actually a long rod 302. Now if you're curious about that engine and what it is, it's basically a D-stroke 331 or a longer rod 302. It uses a 5.4-inch rod out of a 331 stroker motor and a tiny little piston that basically equates to having high RPM with not a lot of piston stroke back and forth. That basically gives us a really good rod ratio like what a 289 would have, to where it's a short stroke but it revs to the sky. So if you want to learn more about that motor, I went very, very in depth on it in a previous video. I'll put a card up. Make sure you check that video out if you're curious on the geometry and the science behind that motor. I go into depth on about it and how it all works. But now we're actually going to talk about the parts that are are in it. So check this out. I'm really proud of this setup. So what we have here, this is only half of it. So basically what we have, this is a forged 3-inch stroke, internally balanced Eagle crankshaft. Now that might have been a little bit of a tongue twister, but basically this thing does not have a 28 or a 50 ounce counterbalance. This whole thing is internally balanced. Therefore, there's no external weights anywhere. And being that we're running a long rod and we're trying to, with a tiny little piston, we're trying to get a lot of RPM out of this thing, we don't want external weights because external mass spinning out really high is not really what we want. We want the mass as close to the center rotation as we can, which is why I opted for this crankshaft. So this is a fully forged crankshaft by Eagle Cranks. I'll leave basically a little build sheet. What I'll end up doing, I'm not done yet, so not in this video. Probably once we actually finish the engine, I'll basically make a full blueprinted list of this engine, assuming it all works together the way I think it's going to. I'm not going to give you guys part numbers and stuff if I don't know if it works. So I want to make sure all this stuff goes together the way that I want, and it puts down the power numbers I want, and that'll make a blueprint for you guys to check out basically every part number and everything if you want to replicate it for yourself. So for right now, I'm just showing you guys what I have. But I brought all this stuff to the machine shop. I wanted to make sure everything was perfectly balanced because we are going to be spinning this thing pretty high. So they went ahead and took a few grams out of the front of the crank. The back he said was perfect, but the front on a lot of crankshafts are typically out of alignment or out of weight. So we went ahead and drilled 2 holes right there to make sure this thing is all perfect. It's close to, I think, within 5 grams of each other from front to back, I think is what he said. I have to look at the receipt. But this thing's all balanced, as well as our pistons and rods. So these, which is the jewelry of the engine, this is a Icon piston with a 5.4 inch scat forged rod. So this is a H-beam rod, not an I-beam rod. I-beam would be cut out in the center here versus an H-beam is on the sides. This is just H-beam, I-beam kind of preference, I guess, depending on what you're doing. This is just what was in stock, so I opted to go with this. And this piston, I'll have to look at the specs real quick just because I forgot off the top of my head, but you can see how much shorter this thing is than a normal 302 piston, and I'll get one out just as a reference. So these are the pistons that actually came out of my F100's engine the first time, not the current one that's in it, but these are original to the truck. These are like the 8.5 to 1 pistons. You can see basically where the center pin is. The whole piston is about almost half the size. I mean, the dome's kind of offsetting it here a lot because this thing has a very big dome on it. But you can see this piston's probably only 75% of the height of a stock piston. Now that, keeping the same geometry, basically you transfer the amount of height on this into the rod. The stock rod was a 5.09 inch rod. Now we're running a 5.4 inch rod. Now that basically offsets the piston height to the rod. You run a longer rod, you can spin the thing higher. It doesn't move as much side to side on the crankshaft. So therefore we can typically, we should be able to spin this thing at a pretty high RPM without running into any sort of engine issues. So, or internal resistance, I guess is a good way to put it. So here's some of the specs on this motor. I go way into more in depth on this engine in a previous video, so I recommend going and watching that if you're actually curious about a lot of the internals about it. Basically a 3-inch stroke, 4030 bore, that's standard to a 302. The 5.4 inch rod from a 331 stroker, that gives us a 1.80 inch rod ratio. It's our side to side movement. And then a compression height. So that is our compression height. That's our piston height basically, is a 1.28. It's very small. So if you want to learn more about this and why these numbers are what they are versus a stock engine, I highly recommend watching that video. It's very good. It goes into depth on all of it and why and how it's different. So go watch that if you're curious. I'm not going to answer it here. But moving on to the block. So this is from another project we haven't really unveiled yet. It's not out of my car. This is actually out of one of Sean's cars that we haven't showed too much of yet. This is the block out of his car. Now this was a completely original, basically a low mile grandpa car, and we tore it all down and tore it apart, and this was the block that was in it. He chose to do a different engine setup, his car, so therefore I made him a cash offer for the block. Therefore, this is a 68 date-coded original 302 block. Now, this thing has been bored over 30 over, a true 30 over bore, versus our last engine was like a tapered 035 bore. That was the biggest issue with the past engine setup. This is a true 30 over bore. As you can see, if I take this piston, which has actually been bored to this piston, I gave him the pistons when I had this thing. Everything fits like it should. There's no loose fitting anything really. So you can see all the cross hatching looks really good. We had it decked. It's got new cam bearings in it. It's got new freeze plugs in the bottom. Everything on this block is pretty much brand new, and all the way down to the part where actually on the back of it still is an older block which has the Z-bar pivot. And if you guys have known, I have a Z-bar clutch in my truck. That's something I wanted to keep for right now. I don't necessarily want to go to a hydraulic yet. It's not something I want to do. I like the clutch setup and I want to keep it. So this is the block we're going to be running. It's a stronger, older block, therefore I got my hands on it. Should work out pretty well. So that's kind of our setup. So we have an internally balanced long rod 302 that's fully forged in the bottom end, and we're gonna stud this thing from A to B. So I have rod studs, main studs. That's what's kind of over in here. These boxes, these are all the bearings and the main caps, and then the rings are in that box, I think right there. And then in another box, I have all of the main studs, the main cap studs, head studs, intake studs, valve cover studs. I stud all the whole motor from basically bottom to the top. It's easier to work with, and it makes it a hell of a lot stronger. It is a lot more money, but with the amount of the RPM that we're turning with this thing, it's gotta last. So now moving on to one thing that's actually gonna help us put the power down in this thing and actually get the air where it needs to go. These are the cylinder heads and the intake for this motor, which is actually probably gonna be one of the most key components of actually making this thing make some serious power numbers. And one thing I'm incredibly stoked to announce for 2022 is we're actually partnering with Airflow Research on the engine build for the F100. So this thing is gonna have a set of AFR Renegade heads on it, as well as their port match intake. I cannot wait for this thing to go together. Let's go and open it up and show you guys what we got. I have not even opened these. I've had these actually for a pretty good amount of time, and I have not opened them, which has been incredibly difficult for me, let me tell you, because I wanted to make sure that you guys got the same reaction that I did. So like I said, I have not opened them. If I can even figure out how to open these things are packaged really well. Wow. You got wood in there. That's actually a really good way to package these. Oh my god, this is difficult. Oh my god. Oh, there's a spider in there. How did the spider get in there? Get out of here. I got him. Let's see if I can get one of these out. Oh boy. Whoa. These things are sick. Man, look at that jewelry. This thing's gonna look so sweet sitting on top of this engine. This is gonna be like the centerpiece for sure. So you can see these are a set of 185s. Now if you're curious on why it seems like such a maybe small size for an engine like this, you have to keep in mind that we're still running a stock 3-inch stroke. Now because of that, if you get into strokers and big bore sizes and 351s and stuff like that, where you're actually boring and stroking these motors, you're moving a significant amount more air. There in that sense, then you can run the 195s and 205s. I brought up running a set of 195s, but the guys at AFR recommended, because I'm such a small geometry, I'm not moving as much air, and therefore the 185s will perform best for my application, and it would actually, really, I could build the baddest 3-inch stroke motor and I wouldn't really have to go any larger than the 185 because of the amount of engineering and science that they have backing these heads. The amount of engineering and testing that they have in these things is absolutely phenomenal. The flow tests are incredible. You can look them up on their website. They have all the information there. But these things should outperform basically any head out there for a small block Ford, and I'm really excited to see what these things put out. Not only that, on the box next to it is actually the port match intake, so let's check that out. But real quick, I want to show you underneath these heads. So you might notice these springs are actually very small. They're small in diameter, which is actually kind of interesting. The ones that I've ran on other heads are actually almost like double the size. So these are almost small but mighty in their own sense. But you can see we'll have screw-in 7/16 studs going across here. You can see this full CNC cut combustion chambers in these things, and then these massive valves. Oh my gosh. Everything is just so perfect looking. It's man jewelry for sure. Absolute man jewelry. I love it. These are gonna be sweet. And with revving this thing as high as we're gonna be, we need something to move the air into the engine to get it out. And that's with this AFR single plane intake. This thing is absolutely phenomenal looking. Look at the volume on that thing. Oh my gosh. All right, let me pull this thing out of the box and show you guys. Oh my gosh. Shee, dang, that thing is big. Wow. Would you look at that? Oh, this is gonna be a nasty 306. All right, you guys, so that's a 302 intake. I mean, kind of a 302 intake. I guess it identifies as one. So, but you can see just the volume of this thing is absolutely astounding. You can just see straight down into the ports, and it's basically as straight of a shot as physically possible you can get into each port. Not only that, the biggest highlight about this versus running a different intake is because AFR actually makes these with their heads. They're port matched from the factory. So when you go ahead and bolt these onto your motor, the intake is already port matched to the head, therefore less resistance and airflow, more power. So this thing's already set up to go. I don't have to put any Play-Doh or clay or any sort of weird stuff trying to get this all engine matched up correctly. I can just bolt it on and we can go. So we can make some serious power really quickly with this thing. And check out the intake ports on this thing. And you can see there's the full CNC porting going on. And as you can see in the exhaust side, it's pretty much a straight shot right into the valve, which is absolutely crazy. So these things are gonna make a stupid amount of power. So I've shown you guys most of the way on how we're getting air into the engine, but another really critical component is actually getting fuel into this thing. So we've actually been lucky enough to work with Holley and MSD on getting the fueling actually sorted for this engine, and it's a pretty gnarly setup. So over here we have a full system from MSD and Holley on their atomic EFI system. So this is basically coil and plug ignition as well as their fuel injection system. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up the box and kind of run you through the A to B on what's actually gonna be putting fuel into this engine. All right, so if we open this guy up, ooh. Oh my. All right guys, so this is MSD's new Atomic EFI. So this is actually a drop-on, ready to go, basically self-learning system that we can basically hook a laptop up to, and we can fully tune this thing also in series with the Sniper EFI setup. That's basically going to be working with all of our electronic and ignition at the same time. So I can run fuel maps, timing maps, and I can tune this thing on a laptop versus just using a screwdriver. Which, because I actually enjoy driving this thing and I want to drive it a lot more, we do a lot. I live up in the mountains, so we're going basically from where I'm at about 2,500 feet of elevation all the way up to as much as 5,500 and back down to sea level in literally one day. Therefore, a lot of times when I do these cruises, I notice the truck starts to run really lean or really rich, and it just runs like crap, and I always have to like either get out and tune it or just suck it up and drive it with no power. So the one thing that's great about this is it'll be pretty much self-learning the entire time, be able to adjust timing and fuel mass based on how the thing's running at different elevations, which is really, really cool. So we'll get more into depth on this system and how it all works once we're actually installing it, because there's a lot that goes into this and making it all work. But basically we have a full blacked out MSD Atomic setup with their coil on plug ignition system. So this actually uses an LS coil all the way across. So we'll have 8 individual coil packs. What you're used to seeing is basically a central coil with a central distributor distributing out to 8 spark plugs. Well, in this one we have a central distributor that distributes out to 8 coil packs that go to 8 spark plugs. So each individual cylinder has its own coil, which is really cool about this. We have relocation block brackets so we can put them wherever they want. And we have a sub harness to make it all work right here. And you can see we have the full direct ignition system right here, which will basically control everything. So it's a full system. We're gonna have a full video covering it and more in depth on everything. So stay tuned for that. Dang, this is just, it's kind of crazy, guys. Never would have thought I'd be building a motor like this, just put it that way. So you notice out of pretty much everything here, there's no camshaft yet, and there's a reason for that. So I'm still actually figuring out the cam specs and everything, and I didn't want to order a cam until I actually have the entire engine together, and we can figure out max valve lift, and stuff like that, and basic compression ratio, deck height, the whole 9 yards, figure out the entire motor setup, and then I can give it to a cam company and then give me a custom grind. Now I'm 99% sure we're gonna go full solid roller on the setup. Basically go as full tilt as I could with this motor. There's no reason to cut any corners now. We've already gone so far, and the amount of solid roller cars that I've ridden in basically just seals the deal that this thing's just gonna be an absolute rocket ship and a total animal, and it's not a daily driver. So for that being said, it's gonna be one of those things to where I'm accepting the fact that it's gonna take more maintenance with solid roller, but it's gonna be totally worth it. But there is no cam yet, so be patient. We'll come out with that when we know more about it. But yeah, so I'm tired of seeing this thing just sit over here. It's been over here for, gosh, it's probably been 4 months now it's been sitting. And you can see it's really starting to take a toll on the truck itself. So here's the setup that's in it. It still does run, it just makes some noise. And I want to keep in mind something here. I've seen a lot of comments on people telling me I don't know how to build an engine and try better next time and get someone that actually knows what they're doing and this, that, and the other. I built this thing with Sean, my first engine ever in my garage in like 10 hours, beat the crap out of it for 6,000 miles, the thing still runs. It just makes a little bit of noise. Could be something simple like as small as a lifter. I don't even know what's wrong with it yet. I just want to say this motor's lasted me very, very well, and keep in mind how hard I've driven this thing at over 6,000 miles. So I didn't build it to make it last, I built it to have fun with it, so remember that. Also, you guys can see it's, unfortunately I don't have a car cover for it. So you can see our roof is really starting to take a toll here, especially in the front. See, that looks amazing. Inside of it, our dash is completely faded. It was black, not anymore. Inside still looks good. Autometer gauges still look good. Headliner still looks good. So, all that is still good. But our engine bay, one of the bummers from it sitting outside, you can actually see is our ARP hardware has actually started to rust, which is really kind of frustrating. I don't know if that's a normal thing. I mean, I get it's black oxide, but it should have a coating that should resist that. So I don't know if I want to try to warranty that or what, but hopefully that doesn't happen on the next motor. But we're gonna go ahead and basically pull the whole front clip of this thing off, completely redo the bay again with fresh paint, and then we'll have a brand new engine inside of it. And we'll make this thing have a little bit of a comeback. So pretty happy for it. Should be pretty cool. I've also got fiberglass because I've just had this forever and I'm trying to get rid of it. So if you know anyone wants short bed fiberglass, let me know. It's gonna be sweet having this thing back in the fleet again. But yeah, I didn't forget about this thing. I never would. This one's never leaving my hands. We're gonna bring this thing back better than ever in 2022. Because actually, as a little bit of a kick in the butt, we actually have a Ford Crew Cab event at Good Guys in Scottsdale, the same one we brought Sean's Super Cab to last year. It's in, I believe, March 2nd or 3rd weekend of March. I think it's the 3rd weekend of March, and that's kind of my goal to get this done by. It's a crew cab event, and I understand I'm a single cab short bed, but the guys that are all there all know who I am, I knew who they are, and they've always wanted me to bring the truck out, so I thought it would be a good opportunity to get the truck done for that. So that is my goal. Basically a month from now, a little over a month from now, I have to finish it. That's better than the 1 week we had last time, so there's no reason I shouldn't be able to finish this. But yeah, so I got a lot of work to do, a lot of talking in this video, so I apologize for that. There's a ton of information. I get to update you guys on stuff, basically for everything in my fleet, all the different updates and vehicles that we have. Hope you guys learned a thing or two. I hope you guys are excited for what's coming on. Leave a like on the video, it would really mean a lot to me. Recommend this to a friend. Comment down below any questions or comments or concerns or what you thought of the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.